Hello. So today we'll be referencing the power of queer, how guys, moms challenge assumptions in heteronormative mothering and family. Beginning with our pre-lecture questions. Number one is, what are the binary assumptions that sociological research tends to focus on? 2, what does doing gender refer to and what are some examples? 3, what does heteronormativity mean and how does it affect family structures? 4, how is queer defined and how does it apply to motherhood? 5, do same-sex parents feel as if the children must comply to their gender, why or why not? 6, how does homonormativity refer to and is it the new normal? And number 7, what are social positions and how do they influence gender? Okay, so beginning with our assumptions about binary categories. So sociological research tends to focus on what it is to be a man or a woman, and it's pretty binary in a sense. So the problem with that is that it assumes that our sex, whether it be female, male, or intersex, as well as our gender identity and our gendered behavior, masculine or feminine, and sexual orientation, whether that be gay, lesbian, heterosexual, bisexual, that they all align in a binary fashion. So there's only a few work that talks about the minorities and kind of accounts for marginalized identities such as queer and transgender. And so the takeaway about this is that basically gender is socially constructed. It is not a biological construction or biologically determined. So the concept of doing gender. So a lot of times this of doing gender makes me, like say a female, play with Barbies and a male play with cars, motorcycles, whatnot. So it basically refers to their interaction with others according to our gender roles. And so we learn this and we relearn this and we revise this concept depending on our life stages. So me being a woman is very different at 3 years old or 5 years old, playing with dolls, having my little pigtails done, or wearing dresses, to being 15 and starting today and all of that. So basically the problem with this is that it leads parents to not allow their kids to use cross-gender toys. So a boy can't be seen being played with a Barbie, or else something might be wrong with him, or just to dress and interact corresponding to your gender from a really young age. So I don't know if you guys have watched Friends, but there's a scene where Ross is upset that his little boy is playing with a Barbie, and he tries to get him to like this masculine toy because he fears that since his wife Carol is now with her lesbian partner, that this will influence his kid's behavior. So that's an example of a gendering role, or parents playing into this from a young age in media. So gendering roles are also where mothers are expected to do certain things, whereas fathers are commended for doing so, like buying groceries. Oh well, mother's supposed to go buy her groceries to cook and feed her family, whereas if a father's doing it and he's with his kid, he'll get stopped at the grocery store and be told, oh well, like you're doing great for like stepping up and helping your wife, when in reality, it should be very 50-50. And so, yeah. And so a lot of the times mothers will still be in the workforce and they'll still come home and do like that overtime job, like or 24/7 job, where they're finished working, they're finished earning their wages, but they'll still come home and cook and clean and take care of the kids, make sure they brush their teeth, make sure they did their homework and whatnot. And so, yeah. Another point that was made was that lesbians tend to have more egalitarian distribution of housework and childcare, so they're more equal in terms of how they distribute that workload. And actually my best friend is dating a girl right now, and she was just telling me how, we kind of talked about how toxic masculinity is a thing, and sometimes we expect men to make the first move, or to buy our dinner, or to, take us out and ask us to be their girlfriend. And so she was like, oh yeah, with my girl partner, there isn't that expectation. Like, I'm willing to pay because, we both earn and make money, and it doesn't feel like she's the one that has to. And so sometimes, we ourselves contribute to that toxic masculinity, where there's that expectation that men have to do it. And so anyways, but yeah, that's another example of how we treat same-sex versus heterosexual interactions differently, and that concept of doing gender. And so another point was that within same-sex and different-sex couples, so both, the partner who made more money did less work at home. And so this shows that there's an equal division of labor and is based on power inequity. So basically, if your primary parent versus your primary earner, and how there's different expectations based on that, or that power. So like, well, if I'm making all the money, and providing financially, then I don't have to provide emotionally or, at home. And so there's that unbalance. And so then heteronormative views of family life. So beginning with heteronormativity, it's basically the assumption and practices grounded in the belief that heterosexuality is the norm and that an individual's sex, gender, sexual orientation, as well as gender selves align. So basically that there is no discrepancy between how you see yourself and how others see you, and it doesn't allow for that freedom. And so, but like this picture shows, there's the mom with the father and then the girl and the boy, like the perfect picture. And this kind of asserts a lifestyle that focuses on like the nuclear family and how biology is a big playing factor. So for example, like when lesbian mothers end up having kids, they're not referred to as like the parent, or one of them is designated as like, well, who gave birth, who is the mother, because that would be considered the real parent versus like the connection they built with their child and so forth. So it does penalize LGBTQ families and in many forms, whether it be in school or medical fields or official and legal standings. And so regardless of the proper paperwork, they just simply, if it's an anti-gay state or so, like they won't give you the privilege that you deserve for being either the lawful wedded wife or the legally adopted kids, just because it's not fitting in that heteronormative view of family life. Okay, and so then queering, family, and motherhood. So beginning with queering, it's whatever is against the normal or dominant views in society. So it pushes to deconstruct and destabilize these accepted ideas. So queer motherhood then refers to the mothering outside of these norms or these boxes that are put into motherhood. So even like single motherhood, where my mom's a single mother, would be considered queer. So that's a strange concept, but basically because you don't have that nuclear family, that heteronormative normal of there's the mother and the father. And so just how that should be weird, just considering single motherhood weird, it should also be weird to consider other families that are seen slightly different as queer. But okay, so anyways, even a mother as a primary earner, which is not seen often given that fathers are usually primary earners. And so aside from that, same-sex parents want the ideal image of a family, but simply because there is no traditional role, it is considered queer. So like, let's say if a family of two gay parents wants, marriage and wants like the kid and the son and wants that image that they're doing well off and fitting into that, ideal societal expectation, just because they're not a male and female partnership or heterosexual partnership, then they're considered queer. And so this creates a marginalization of these non-typical families, and so it further like marginalizes them. So like, let's say if a sex parent is asked on the playground, like, oh, well, so given that, you're in a same-sex partnership, how is it that you had your kid, or was it adoption or whatnot? So then people tend to pry more just because they feel like they are entitled to it, since they know that there is a difference. But some heterosexual couples that can't have kids aren't pried the same level simply because it's more private and they're allowed to keep it more private because of that discrimination. But basically the takeaway is that queering is meant to destabilize gender order in society, and not just in society, but in a lot of the social institutions that come with society, like the healthcare and legal systems. Okay, so the politics of sameness. So children of same-sex families show no difference to children of heterosexual couples when it comes to mental health, school outcomes, sexual behavior, substance abuse, peer victimization, or family relationships. However, because there's so much research focusing on like how alike the families are between heterosexual or homosexual couples, there's not a lot of research in terms of how they're different, and like the differences, whether they be positive or negative, aren't really looked into, in fear of further marginalizing LGBTQ families, and so, or not marginalizing because they are marginalized, but more so endangering them. And so lesbian-headed families tend to implement more focus on child rearing, and fewer parenting disagreements are seen as well. So because of the less disagreements, there's also more lack of abuse. There are less abusive parents, and there's also greater social and academic competence for their children, as well as fewer social problems and externalizing behaviors. So there's greater communication, and they want to be communicative with the people at school, in their friend groups, and so on and so forth. However, it does say that gay fathers want to do the mom thing and dress their kids in dresses and paint their fingernails because of this pressure that they're given, that their kids should fit in and that their kids shouldn't be influenced by their homosexuality. And so they're pressured to feel like, okay, just because I'm homosexual doesn't mean that my child has to be homosexual, and like to get them to fit in the norm and still implement those gender roles from a young age to, feel like they're fitting in one way or another. So it ends up leading to like gender compliance in their children. Okay, moving on to homonormativity and the new normal. So as gay marriage is legalized and the do not ask, do not tell policy has been revoked, there is some more social acceptance, but because of this, there's also that pressure to assimilate to heteronormative structures, leading to the definition of homonormativity, which is the social acceptance of gays and lesbians based on their ability to express heteronormative values and behaviors. So, like, as long as they're different, but they still assimilate in, their behaviors or like their family values, that they personify this economic individualism of like, oh, I work and I'm well off because of it, I guess, and so they display that national pride, and then they're accepted. It's not like, oh, you're just accepted. It's like you're accepted, but you have to fit into these other boxes if you want to be different in this other way. And so I included this Time magazine where it shows like a white woman, and she says, yep, I'm gay, and in a way I was like, okay, well, she's still white, she's still feminine presenting, and I don't know, I just felt like it was in a way like trying to make her fit in into like what we already see in the media. Like it wasn't like someone that was against the norms in terms of her dressing. Like they dressed her in all black, so it's like she's not even displaying her sense of style. I don't know, it just gives me a typical mom, and like that typical mom is saying this. But anyway, so moving on. So technically the new normal is affluent, white, monogamous, and conventional. So it's closer to heteronormative. And so basically, as long as you are closer to heteronormative, the less sanctioned you are. But moving on to transgressive mothering, so some families and mothers hold a more radical conception of gender, sexual orientation, as family, as more so of a conscious political act, because they are so far from the new normal. So if their masculinity, femininity, gender identity, or relationship status doesn't align with either hetero or homonormative standards, so like it's outside of even the homonormativity where they want to assimilate to heteronormative standards. So basically little or no research has been done on this, and it queers all aspects of mothering within the social institutions. So yeah, like we mentioned before, so gay men will consider themselves mothers because although they don't identify as women, they still identify as being a mother since they fulfill that role of being a mother. So like let's say they still will have a mothering role in their child's life because they'll still change the diapers, tend to them, feed them, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't change how they view themselves in terms of gender, but yes, in terms of their social role, basically. And so moving on to the next slide, gay moms, gender, and single motherhood. Gender is not just a combination of behavior and appearance, but also includes one's social position. So kind of leading from what we were talking about in the previous slide, mother would be a social position. So, like I mentioned, for example, a social position as a mother influences one's personal life more than gender identity, appearance, or behavior would. So like, because you're a mother, now you have specific roles that you have to fulfill, and that does more for a gender than, you know, just how you behave or how you look. So social positions generally ascribed to one's sex influence our lives. So whether that be mother or single mother, those are specific social locations. And so single parenthood is it's usually put on women, and it comes with poverty and legal troubles and little resources as parenting, and its costs fall disproportionately on the mother. So I put a picture of a mother, and she's carrying her child. It looks like she's carrying a grocery bag and her personal bag and their dog, and you just see how like there's a social worker in the bottom right hand corner that's just kind of like looking up in speculation of the mother, and then there's like behind another tree there's like the doctor, you know, just checking in, making sure that, you know, the single mother is doing her job, and you know, it's just that speculation from so many social institutions that is put on single mothers, and because, you know, they know that they have to bear a harder load, and they have to be working moms, and they have to put in that time to, you know, financially provide as well as emotionally provide, and you know that is hard, and like mentioned, you know, it puts hard barriers on a person. And so yeah, I was just gonna go on a tangent on my mom and how much she's done for us and how great she's done regardless of all the obstacles she had to face, but it's a little tangent. So legally claiming to be a single mother and all that accompanies it while still retaining masculine and male gender identity is basically what the author of this section of the article was saying that he did, and that it was basically like defying gender roles. Okay, so queering childhood and its unexamined possibilities. So a common concern for a lot of same-sex parents is that if a child needs to be raised with either a male or female role model in the home. So like let's say if it's a gay couple, if they need a female role model, or if it's a lesbian couple, if they need a male role model in their home in order for their kids to be, you know, growing up with as much normal as they can. So boys raised by lesbians are actually, it shows that boys raised by lesbians are more empathetic and value egalitarian relationships. So is this really like a bad thing, or is it a good thing? And if it's a good thing or a strength, you know, like how can we then use that and replicate it in heterosexual families so that it continues to be something that males see as, or boys see as, something valuable. And so there was a story of a father where he mentions, is it a male role model, one that has a male body but teaches his daughter to knit and apply makeup, or is it a masculine identifying person who helps with car brakes and such enough to be a male role model? So like, I guess it's that conception of, is it what you're teaching or like doing gender, or is it your biology that defines this? And so, you know, overall though, children from same-sex parents don't feel that need to play into these gender roles, and so basically they're not as accountable to their gender roles. And in doing so, you know, they're showing and further displaying that gender behaviors are social roles, and so they're optional and they're not necessary, and they are only the norm because we make them the norm and we continue to do so. And so here are our post-lecture discussion questions, which were a reiteration of our pre-lecture discussion questions to see if we can answer them a little differently, and quiz questions. So what is the binary assumption that sociological research tends to focus on, which is, what is it to be a man or a woman in society, which is how we open the presentation. And which of the following is true about doing genders? Since it's all of the above, you know, I'll go over what it is. So it refers to an interaction with others according to our gender roles. It changes from life stage to life stage as we learn, and adjust to our surroundings. And it leads to gender roles. And then, so how does heteronormativity affect family structures? So the answer is A and B, which is it asserts lifestyles of nuclear families that favors biology, as well as it penalizes LGBTQ families in school, medical, and official lens. And what is homonormativity? So it's societal acceptance based on heteronormative values and behaviors. And then what is not an example of queering in motherhood? And so I hope this is not confusing, but it's none of the above, since being a single mother, a trans mother, or a gay mother would all be terms of queering in motherhood. And then what has research shown about children from lesbian-led families? Like we just discussed a little bit ago, it basically has shown all of the above, which is that they experience less abuse, they have greater academic competence, and they show fewer social problems. And so next one is, what is a social position that influences gender? And that is motherhood. And so for our activity today, we're gonna split up into our tables, into our groups, and in each table there will be 6 flashcards, like in this little picture, and each flashcard has a number and it has a question on the flip side. So basically we'll roll the dice, and whatever number you land on, you'll answer that question. And you can get help from your teammates or your classmates, but basically the aim of the activity is to answer all of the questions based on this lecture. So thank you guys for listening.